The Velthari Empire had ruled 1/3 of the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their ships were made of living crystal that could heal itself. Their soldiers stood 3 meters tall and could see in complete darkness. Their weapons could burn through mountains. No species had ever defeated them in war. No species had even come close. The High Sovereign sat on his throne of black crystal and looked at the holographic map floating before him. Billions of stars marked the territory of his empire. Trillions of beings served under his rule. He was old, even by Velthari standards. He had lived for 9,000 years and had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. But there was one small region of the map that bothered him. A tiny cluster of stars near the edge of the galaxy. The human territory. 3,000 years ago, the Velthari had discovered humanity. They were primitive then, just beginning to leave their home planet. The High Sovereign's predecessor had laughed at them. Small, weak creatures with soft skin and short lives. They would be conquered eventually, but there was no hurry. The Velthari had time. They always had time. But now, reports were coming in that troubled the High Sovereign. Humans were spreading faster than expected. Their technology was growing at an unusual rate. Their population had reached 50 billion across hundreds of worlds. And strangest of all, they were building weapons. Lots of weapons. Far more than they needed to defend themselves. "They are preparing for something," said his advisor, a younger Velthari named Korath. "Our spies report that every human undergoes military training. Every single one. Even their children learn to fight." The High Sovereign waved his hand dismissively. "They are a fearful species. They fight among themselves constantly. It is their nature, perhaps. But their weapons are becoming concerning. They have developed technologies we do not fully understand. Impossible. We are the oldest civilization in this region of space. No young species could match our knowledge." Korath bowed his head. "Of course, High Sovereign. I only report what our spies have seen." The High Sovereign was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the tiny cluster of human stars on his map. Such a small thing. Such an insignificant species. And yet something in his ancient mind whispered a warning. A feeling he had not experienced in thousands of years. He ignored it. "Send the declaration," he said finally. "We will subjugate them now, before they spread further. Mobilize the full armada. 4 million ships. 12 billion soldiers. We will crush them so completely that no other species will ever dare to challenge us again." The message was sent across the stars at faster than light speed. It was written in the formal style of Velthari conquest, full of grand words about cosmic destiny and the natural order of things. It promised destruction to any who resisted and slavery to those who surrendered. It gave humanity 30 days to respond. Admiral Una Park received the message while eating instant noodles in her quarters aboard the battleship Indomitable. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles to count. She read the declaration twice, slowly, making sure she understood every word. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh or a scared laugh. A genuine laugh of amusement, like someone had told her a good joke. Finally, she said to herself, "They actually did it." She forwarded the message to United Earth Command with a short note. "The Velthari have declared war. Recommend we begin Operation Field Test. Also, their formal writing style is ridiculous." On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea, General Taewoo Kim called an emergency meeting. The war room filled with admirals, generals, and commanders from every branch of the military. Holographic displays showed the positions of human fleets across hundreds of star systems. Taewoo was 60 years old, with a shaved head and a face that rarely showed emotion. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. His father had prepared before him, and his grandfather before that. For 3,000 years, humanity had known this day would come. The Valkyrie Declaration arrived 2 hours ago, Taiwu announced. They are mobilizing their entire military. 4 million warships. 12 billion ground troops. They expect to conquer us within 1 year. The room was silent. Not with fear, but with focus. Every person there had trained for this war since childhood. What is our response? Asked Commander Yunji Choi, a young woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. We accept their declaration, said Taiwu. And we designate this conflict as Operation Field Test. All engagements will be treated as live-fire training exercises. Performance reviews will be conducted after each battle. I expect detailed reports on what we do well and what we can improve. A few officers smiled at this. Others nodded seriously. Sir, said Admiral Junho Beek, commander of the Third Fleet. The Valkyrie outnumber us significantly. Their armada is massive. Yes, agreed Taiwo. It will be an excellent opportunity to test our new weapon systems under realistic conditions. Make sure all data is recorded for analysis. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Strategies were confirmed. Fleet positions were adjusted. Supply lines were checked. Everything humanity had built over 3,000 years was put into motion. What the Valkyrie did not understand was simple. Humans had known about them since first contact. They had seen how the Valkyrie treated other species. They had watched entire civilizations be conquered and enslaved. And they had decided collectively that this would never happen to them. Every scientific breakthrough for 3,000 years had been directed toward one goal: survival. Every military strategy had been designed with one enemy in mind. Every human child learned from birth that someday the Valkyrie would come. And when they came, humanity would be ready. The Valkyrie thought they were starting a war. Humans knew they were finishing one. Admiral Unipark stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 4 million enemy ships were preparing to attack. 12 billion soldiers were training to kill her people. An empire that had never lost a war was coming to destroy everything she loved. She took another bite of her noodles. Navigation, she said calmly. Set course for the border. The Ninth Fleet will be the welcoming committee. Yes, Admiral. Estimated arrival in 14 hours. Good. That gives me time to finish my meal and take a nap. Wake me when we arrive. Our crew did not question this. They had served under Admiral Park for 15 years. They knew that her calm was not ignorance or arrogance. It was confidence built on 3,000 years of preparation. The largest war in galactic history was about to begin, and humanity was treating it like a training exercise. Because in a way, that is exactly what it was. Every battle would be studied. Every tactic would be analyzed. Every mistake would be corrected. Humanity did not just want to win this war. They wanted to perfect the art of war itself. The Valkyrie had no idea what was coming. They had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years by being the strongest, the oldest, the most powerful. They had forgotten what it was like to face an enemy who was truly prepared. An enemy who had spent every moment of its existence getting ready for exactly this fight. The ancient empire was about to learn a terrible lesson. Age means nothing against preparation. And humanity had been preparing for a very, very long time. The Valkyrie Armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 100,000 ships, the vanguard of the greatest military force ever assembled. Their crystalline hulls glowed with ancient power. Their weapons charged with energy that could crack planets in half. Their commanders stood proud and certain of victory. Fleet Commander Dravok looked at his tactical display and felt satisfaction wash over him. Earth was only a few hours away. The human homeworld, the center of their pathetic little civilization. He would burn it to ash and present its remains to the High Sovereign as a gift. "Scan for enemy positions," he ordered. "I want to know exactly how many ships they have managed to gather for their defense." His sensor officer worked quickly, then stopped. He ran the scan again and again. "Commander," he said, his voice uncertain, "I am detecting human ships at the system boundary. How many?" 15,000, Commander." Dravok smiled. His force outnumbered them almost 7-1. This would not even be a battle. It would be an execution. "Excellent. Order all ships to attack formation. We will destroy them and continue to Earth without delay." The Valkyrie fleet moved forward, spreading into their ancient combat pattern. It was a formation they had used for 8,000 years. It had never failed them. Enemy fleets would scatter before their overwhelming firepower, allowing the Valkyrie to pick them off one by one. But the human ships did not scatter. Admiral Una Park watched the Valkyrie approach on her tactical display. She had slept well and eaten a good breakfast. Her uniform was clean and pressed. She looked like she was preparing for a formal dinner, not the first major battle of an interstellar war. "They are using the convergence pattern," observed Lieutenant Marie Song from the tactical station. "It is designed to break enemy formations through concentrated firepower." "I know," said Una. "I wrote my academy thesis on Valkyrie naval tactics. That pattern works well against enemies who panic and run. It is useless against enemies who stand and fight." She pressed a button on her command chair. Her voice broadcast to every ship in the Ninth Fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. The enemy is approaching in convergence pattern. Execute Counter Protocol 7. Remember, this is a training exercise. I want clean kills and minimal ammunition waste. Performance reviews will be conducted after the battle." Park out. The human fleet began to move. Dravok watched in confusion as the enemy ships did not flee or scatter. Instead, they reorganized into a strange formation he had never seen before. Small groups of ships, working in perfect coordination, each group covering the others. "What are they doing?" he asked. No one had an answer. Then the humans opened fire. Captain Jinho Lee commanded the destroyer Silent Thunder. He was 32 years old, young for a captain, but his skills had earned him the position. His ship was small compared to the massive Valkyrie cruisers, but it was fast and deadly. "Target the lead cruiser," he ordered. "Aim for the shield generator on the lower hull." His weapons officer, a calm woman named Sora Yoon, entered the firing solution. "Ready, Captain. Fire." A beam of concentrated antimatter shot from the Silent Thunder and struck the Valkyrie cruiser exactly where Sora had aimed. The alien shields flickered and died. A second later, 3 other human ships fired at the same target. The cruiser exploded in a ball of crystal and flame. "Target destroyed," reported Sora, moving to next target. Across the battlefield, the same scene repeated thousands of times. Human ships worked in small groups, each group targeting a single enemy vessel. They knew exactly where to aim, exactly when to fire, exactly how to coordinate their attacks. It was not combat. It was surgery. Dravok could not believe what he was seeing. His ships were dying. Not slowly, not in a desperate struggle, but quickly and efficiently. The humans were cutting through his fleet like a knife through water. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships, return fire!" The Valkyrie weapons were powerful. Their plasma cannons could melt through steel. Their crystal torpedoes could shatter small moons. But the human ships were not where the Valkyrie expected them to be. They moved constantly, unpredictably, always just ahead of the enemy targeting systems. "Their ships are too fast," reported his tactical officer. "We cannot lock onto them." That is impossible. Our targeting systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. They were, Commander. 3,000 years ago. The battle lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of chaos and fire and death. 4 hours of Earthly ships exploding one after another, while human ships danced between their formations like ghosts. When it was over, the Vanguard was destroyed. 100,000 ships reduced to floating debris. Not a single vessel remained operational. Additional human losses. 47 ships damaged. 3 destroyed. 1,212 personnel killed. Admiral Park reviewed the casualty report with a frown. 47 ships damaged. That is too many. What happened? The 17th Squadron was caught in a crossfire during the final phase, reported her aide, Lieutenant Sunho Han. They deviated from their assigned pattern by 0.3 degrees. Note it for the review. That kind of mistake cannot happen against the main fleet. Yes, Admiral. On his flagship, Commander Dravik floated in the wreckage of his bridge. He was dying. A piece of crystal had pierced his chest. His blood, silver and cold, pooled around him. With his last strength, he activated his emergency transmitter. His final message would be sent to the main fleet, a warning about what they would face. The humans, he gasped. They are not what we thought. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They have been waiting for us. Preparing for us? Do not underestimate them. Do not. The transmission ended. 3 days later, the message reached the main Valkyrie fleet. The admirals listened in silence. Then they laughed. One defeat means nothing, said High Admiral Korvax, commander of the entire armada. Dravik was always overconfident. He probably rushed into battle without proper reconnaissance. We will not make the same mistake. Perhaps we should reconsider our strategy, suggested one of his subordinates. Reconsider? Against humans? They won one small battle against an overconfident fool. We have 4 million ships. We have conquered 100 species. We do not reconsider strategy because of one setback. He waved his hand dismissively. Continue the invasion. Full speed. I want to be in Earth orbit within 2 weeks. The Valkyrie fleet moved forward, deeper into human space. They did not know that the battle at Seoul had been broadcast to every human world. 50 billion people had watched their fleet destroy the Valkyrie Vanguard. They had seen their ships perform with perfect precision. They had seen their enemy die. And they were not afraid. On New Bison, a colony world near the front lines, Sergeant Major Hyun Woo Kang watched the battle footage on his restaurant's old television. He was 58 years old, retired from the military for 6 years. His hands, once trained to kill, now made seafood stew. Beautiful work, he said quietly, watching a human destroyer cut through a Valkyrie cruiser. Perfect targeting. Clean kills. His wife, Jian, stood beside him. They will come here next, won't they? Maybe. The Valkyrie need to capture colonies to establish supply lines. Are you worried? Hyunwoo smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who smelled prey approaching. No, he said. I am not worried at all. In his basement, behind a locked door, his old combat suit waited. It had been maintained carefully for 6 years. Cleaned, charged, ready, just like him. The war had begun, and humanity was just getting started. New Bison was a beautiful world. Green hills rolled across its surface like gentle waves. Rivers of clear water cut through valleys filled with farms and small towns. 2 million people lived there, most of them farmers and miners, who had come seeking a quiet life away from the crowded cities of Earth. The Valkyrie chose it as their first ground target. General Valtharej stood on the bridge of his command ship, and looked down at the peaceful planet below. He was one of the most decorated ground commanders in the Empire, a veteran of 30 planetary conquests. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had never lost a campaign. 2 million humans, he said. Farmers and miners. No military bases detected. No orbital defenses remaining. The human defense fleet had retreated after a brief engagement, leaving the planet exposed. This will be simple. His aide nodded. We are deploying 12 million soldiers, General. 6-1 advantage. Victory is certain. I want this done quickly. The High Sovereign is watching. Show him that the loss at Sol was a mistake, not a pattern. Dropships filled the sky above New Bizen like a swarm of metal insects. They descended toward the largest population centers, carrying soldiers who had conquered countless worlds. Each Velthari warrior was 3 meters tall, covered in natural crystal armor, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. They expected to find frightened civilians hiding in their homes. They did not expect Sergeant Major Hyunwoo Kang. When the sirens sounded across New Bizen, Hyunwoo did not panic. He had heard sirens like this before, in training exercises and emergency drills. Every person on the planet had. They knew exactly what to do. He walked calmly to his restaurant's back room and opened a hidden panel in the floor. Inside was a ladder leading down to a small armory. His combat suit hung on the wall, black and sleek, still perfectly maintained. Beside it was his rifle, a weapon that could punch holes through Velthari crystal armor at 1,000 meters. He put on the suit. It felt like coming home. All citizens, this is Mayor Sujin Beek, announced a voice over the emergency broadcast. Evacuation protocols are now in effect. Non-combatants report to underground shelters. All militia members report to your designated positions. Remember your training. Remember who you are. Hyunwoo kissed his wife goodbye. Jium was going to the shelters with the children and elderly. She did not cry. She did not beg him to stay. She simply held him for a moment, then let go. Come back, she said. I will. He joined the others gathering in the streets. Farmers with rifles. Miners with explosives. Teachers with medical kits. Every adult on New Bizen had completed 4 years of mandatory military service. Every home had weapons. Every family had a plan. They were not soldiers, but they knew how to fight. The first Velthari dropships landed in the agricultural valley outside the main city. 5,000 warriors emerged, forming into perfect combat lines. They advanced toward the civilian settlement with confidence, their weapons ready. They did not see the humans hidden in the fields. Hyunwoo lay flat in a drainage ditch, his rifle pointed at the approaching enemy. Around him, 200 other militia members waited in silence. They had been in position for 3 hours, covered with thermal blankets that hid them from alien sensors. Wait for it, he whispered into his communication unit. Let them get close. The Velthari marched forward. 100 meters. 50 meters. 20 meters. Now, 200 rifles fired at once. The sound was like thunder. Velthari soldiers fell, their crystal armor shattered by weapons designed specifically to kill them. Before they could react, before they could return fire, the humans had vanished back into the fields. The Velthari commander screamed orders. His soldiers spread out, searching for the attackers. They found nothing. The humans had melted away like ghosts. Then the explosion started. Mines buried in the roads. Traps hidden in buildings. Bombs attached to vehicles the Velthari tried to use for cover. The entire valley had been turned into a killing ground, and the Velthari were walking straight into it. General Veltharek watched the reports come in with growing disbelief. His soldiers were dying, not in combat, but in ambushes. The humans would appear, kill a dozen warriors, then disappear before anyone could respond. They knew the land perfectly. They knew where to hide, where to strike, where to run. "This is impossible," he said. "They are farmers, civilians. They fight like trained soldiers, General," reported one of his officers. "Their tactics are sophisticated. Their weapons are military grade. Every single one of them. How can farmers have military grade weapons?" No one had an answer. In a small valley on the eastern side of the continent, Hyunwoo and his squad held a defensive position. There were 30 of them against 10,000 Velthari soldiers. The odds were impossible, but they had the high ground. They had prepared positions. They had ammunition that would last for days. And they had something the Velthari did not understand. They had each other. "Dan, cover the left flank," Hyunwoo ordered. Corporal Dan Yoon, a 25-year-old woman who had been a schoolteacher last week, moved to her position without question. "Minho, watch for flanking movements. Everyone else, conserve your ammunition. Make every shot count." The Velthari attacked in waves. Each wave was driven back with heavy losses. They tried to flank. They tried to charge. They tried artillery bombardment. Nothing worked. The humans always had an answer, always had a counter, always knew what was coming before it arrived. Hours passed. The sun set and rose again. Hyunwoo did not sleep. He could not sleep. Every moment required decisions. Every decision meant life or death. At the 19th hour, when his ammunition was almost gone and his soldiers were exhausted, he heard a sound that made his heart sing. Human dropships appeared over the horizon. Reinforcements. The fresh troops landed behind the Velthari position, trapping them between two forces. What followed was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Within 2 hours, 10,000 Velthari soldiers were dead or captured. Corporal Dan Yoon walked up to Hyunwoo with a ration pack in her hand. "You missed lunch," she said. Hyunwoo looked down at himself. He was covered in alien blood. His suit was damaged in a dozen places, and he had not eaten in almost a day. He took the ration pack. "The stew will keep," he replied. "Status on the eastern ridge?" "Secured. The Velthari are retreating across the continent." "Good. We follow them. No rest until they are off our world." It took 7 days to completely clear New Bizen of Velthari forces. 7 days of constant fighting, constant movement, constant pressure. The 12 million invaders were reduced to less than 2 million. Most of those were prisoners. Human losses: 6,400 dead. 12,000 wounded. General Veltharic was among the captured. He sat in a holding cell, unable to understand what had happened. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had faced enemies far more powerful than humans. And he had been defeated by farmers. A human officer came to question him. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with a calm face and intelligent eyes. Her name tag read Captain Yeren Nam. "I have questions," said Veltharic. "I might have answers," replied Yeren. "Your people. They fought like elite soldiers. Every single one of them. How is this possible?" Yeren smiled. It was a patient smile, like a teacher explaining something obvious to a slow student. "Every human serves 4 years in the military," she said. "Every human maintains their skills throughout their lives. Every human home has weapons and emergency supplies. We have been preparing for invasion since we first learned about your empire. But why? You had no reason to fear us. We had not threatened you. You conquered 100 species. You enslaved billions of beings. You made it very clear what happens to those who cannot defend themselves. So we decided to be able to defend ourselves, always, forever." Veltharic was silent for a long moment. "We have ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. he finally said. "We've never met a species like yours." "No," agreed Yaren. "You have not. And that is why you are going to lose this war." She stood up and walked to the door. "Wait," said Veltharic. "What happens to me now?" "You will be treated according to the rules of war. Fed, housed, eventually exchanged or released. We are not monsters, General. We are just very, very good at fighting them." She left him alone with his thoughts. Outside, the sun was rising over New Bizen. The fields were scarred with battle damage. Buildings were destroyed. People were mourning their dead. But the planet was free, and humanity had proven something important. They could not just fight in space. They could fight on the ground, too. Every world they held would be a fortress. Every citizen would be a soldier. The Velthari Empire was about to learn that conquering humanity would cost more than they could possibly afford. The High Sovereign sat alone in his throne room. The lights were dim. The holographic map that usually showed his glorious empire was turned off. He did not want to see it. He did not want to see the red marks that showed lost territory, destroyed fleets, and captured generals. 6 months had passed since the war began. 6 months of constant defeat. The Vanguard fleet destroyed. The ground invasion failed. 3 more major fleet engagements, all lost. 2 million ships gone. Billions of soldiers dead or captured. The humans were not just defending. They were advancing. His advisor Korath entered quietly. "High Sovereign, the humans have sent a communication." "I do not want to hear it." "It is important, High Sovereign. Admiral Park is demanding our surrender." The High Sovereign laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Surrender. They want us to surrender. We have ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. We do not surrender. Perhaps you should hear what she has to say." The holographic display flickered to life. Admiral Unipark appeared, standing on the bridge of her flagship. She looked the same as always, calm, professional, holding a cup of coffee in her hand like she was having a casual conversation. "High Sovereign," she said, "I am required by Earth law to offer terms of surrender before we enter your home system. You have 72 hours to accept. You dare threaten the heart of our empire?" The High Sovereign's voice was loud, but there was something beneath it. Something that sounded almost like fear. "I am not threatening. I am informing. Our fleet is currently 3 days from Volthara. 50,000 ships. We will arrive whether you surrender or not. The only question is whether your people will survive our arrival. We have defenses. We have ships. We have nothing." Yuna's voice did not change. She did not raise it. She did not need to. "We have spent 3,000 years studying your military. We know every ship class, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine. We know things about your defenses that your own admirals have forgotten." She took a sip of her coffee. "You see, High Sovereign, you made a mistake. When you discovered us 3,000 years ago, you laughed at us. You called us primitive. You decided we were not worth conquering yet. And then you ignored us. That was not a mistake. You were primitive. We were young. There is a difference. Young species can grow. Young species can learn. Young species can spend 3,000 years doing nothing but preparing for the war they know is coming." The High Sovereign was silent. "Every scientific breakthrough we made was directed toward this war," Yuna continued. "Every military strategy was designed to defeat you. Every resource we had went into preparation. You spent 12,000 years growing comfortable. We spent 3,000 years growing dangerous. This is not possible. We are the oldest civilization, the most powerful. You were." Past tense. The transmission ended. The High Sovereign sat in darkness for a long time after that. Then he called for his remaining admirals. There were not many left. Most had died in the failed campaigns. "We must defend the homeworld," he said. "Gather every ship we have. Call back all forces from the occupied territories. Nothing matters except protecting Velthara." "High Sovereign," said one admiral carefully, "if we abandon the occupied territories, the enslaved species will rebel. Let them rebel. We can reconquer them later. Right now, survival is all that matters." The orders went out. Across the Empire, Velthari ships began to retreat. Worlds that had been under their control for thousands of years were suddenly abandoned. Slave species looked up at empty skies and began to realize they were free. But it was too late. Far too late. Commander Yoonji Choi led the assault on the Velthari shipyards at Corvex Prime. These shipyards had built warships for 8,000 years. They were defended by 12,000 vessels and massive orbital fortresses. Yoonji had 300 ships. "Commander," said her tactical officer, "the enemy outnumbers us 40 to 1. I am aware of the math, Lieutenant. Our orders are to destroy the shipyards and retreat. Should we not wait for reinforcement?" Yoonji smiled. It was a sharp smile, like a blade. "We do not need reinforcement. We need precision. Execute attack pattern Delta 7. 300 ships moved like a single organism. They did not attack the enemy fleet head-on. Instead, they slipped through gaps in the formation, targeting specific ships with surgical accuracy. The Velthari commanders tried to respond, but their orders were slow. Their coordination was poor. They had not fought a real war in 8,000 years. Yoonji's ships had trained for this exact scenario 10,000 times in simulation. "Focus fire on the command ship," she ordered. "Take out their coordination." 12 human destroyers concentrated their fire on the Velthari flagship. The ancient vessel's shields collapsed in seconds. The ship exploded in a ball of crystal and flame. Without coordination, the Velthari fleet fell into chaos. Ships fired on each other by accident. Formations collapsed. Retreat orders conflicted with attack orders. Yoonji watched the confusion with satisfaction. "All ships, proceed to secondary targets. Destroy the shipyards." The shipyards had no defenses of their own. They had always relied on the fleet for protection. Human missiles tore through them like paper. Construction bays exploded. Half-built ships shattered. Fuel reserves ignited in massive fireballs. 6 hours after the battle began, Corvex Prime was a field of debris. "All targets destroyed," reported the tactical officer. "Enemy fleet has retreated. Our losses: 7 ships damaged. None destroyed." Yoonji nodded. "Good, but our response time in Sector 3 was 2 seconds slower than optimal. Note it for the after-action report." "Yes, Commander." Back on Earth, General Taewoo Kim reviewed the reports from across the front. Every engagement was a human victory. Every Velthari counterattack was defeated. The enemy was retreating on all fronts, pulling back toward their homeworld. "The performance metrics are improving," he told his staff. "The Third Fleet's coordination has increased by 4% since last month. The ground forces on Kepler 7 achieved their objectives 3 hours ahead of schedule." "Sir," said one of his aides, "we are winning the war. Perhaps we can relax the performance standards slightly." Taewoo looked at him with cold eyes. "We are not just trying to win this war. We are trying to perfect the art of war itself. Every battle is a lesson. Every engagement is a test. There is always room for improvement." The aide did not argue. Across human space, the same attitude prevailed. Victory was not enough. Excellence was the goal. Every soldier, every pilot, every commander pushed themselves to be better. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. This was what the Velthari never understood. Humans did not fight because they were ordered to. They fought because they believed in something. They believed in each other. They believed in their future. They believed that every sacrifice mattered. Admiral Una Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the stars. Her fleet was one day away from Velthara, one day away from the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 12,000 years. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Sunohan, "we are receiving a transmission from the High Sovereign." On screen, the High Sovereign appeared. He looked different than before, older, tired. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. In his place was something that looked almost like respect. "Admiral Park, I wish to discuss terms. I offered terms 3 days ago. You rejected them. I was mistaken. I did not understand what we were facing." He paused. "I have ruled for 9,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I thought I understood war. I was wrong." Una waited. "Your species is unlike anything we have encountered. You do not fight for conquest. You do not fight for glory. You fight because you refuse to die. You fight because you will not be slaves. And you have spent every moment of your existence preparing for this fight." "Yes," said Una simply. "We have. I accept your terms. The Velthari Empire surrenders unconditionally." Una nodded. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. Victory was not a moment of joy for her. It was simply the expected outcome of 3,000 years of preparation. "Wise choice, High Sovereign. Transmit surrender orders to all your forces. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Any cooperation will be met with fair treatment." "And what happens to my people?" "Your military is disbanded. Your conquered species are freed. Your empire becomes a member of a new galactic coalition that we are founding. You will have representation. You will have rights. But you will never again dominate others. You are merciful. We are practical. Destroying you would be easy. Building something better is harder. We choose the harder path." The transmission ended. Una turned to her crew. "Send word to all human forces. The war is over. We won!" Cheers erupted across the ship, across the fleet, across human space. 50 billion people celebrated their survival, their victory, their future. But Admiral Park did not celebrate. She simply turned back to the stars and took another sip of her coffee. The war was over. But for humanity, the work was just beginning. They had defeated an empire. Now they had to build something better. And she knew they would, because that was what humans did. They prepared. They fought. They won. And then they built. Always. The planet Velthara was beautiful in a strange, alien way. Crystal towers rose from the surface like frozen flames. Rivers of silver liquid flowed between ancient monuments that had stood for longer than humanity had existed. The sky was purple, lit by 3 small suns that circled each other in an endless dance. Admiral Una Park looked down at it from orbit and felt nothing special. It was just a planet. Just rock and water and living things. The Velthari had built their entire identity around this world, around the idea that they were special, chosen, destined to rule. But in the end, they were just another species trying to survive in a universe that did not care about destiny. 50,000 human ships surrounded Velthara, the largest fleet ever assembled by any species. They had come not to destroy, but to witness, to make sure the surrender was real. "The High Sovereign is ready to sign the formal surrender documents," reported Lieutenant Sunohan. "He requests that you attend in person." Una nodded. "Prepare my shuttle. I want a security detail of 50 soldiers. No weapons drawn unless absolutely necessary." "Is that wise, Admiral?" Going down to their planet with only 50 soldiers? If 50 soldiers cannot protect me, 50,000 would not matter. Besides, I do not think the High Sovereign wants to fight anymore. He has seen enough death. The shuttle descended through the purple atmosphere. Yuna watched through the window as crystal cities passed below. Some showed signs of damage from orbital bombardment. Others were untouched. The war had reached this far, but it had stopped before causing true destruction. That was deliberate. Humanity could have destroyed Velthara, could have killed every Velthari in existence. They chose not to, not because they were weak, but because they understood something the Velthari never had. True strength was not just the ability to destroy. It was the ability to choose not to. The shuttle landed in front of the Imperial Palace. It was the largest structure Yuna had ever seen, a mountain of crystal that seemed to glow from within. Thousands of Velthari lined the pathway to the entrance, watching in silence as the human admiral walked past them. They did not look at her with hatred. They looked at her with something closer to wonder. This small creature, this member of a species they had dismissed as primitive, had brought their empire to its knees. They could not understand how. They could only accept that it had happened. The High Sovereign waited in the throne room. He stood, rather than sitting on his throne. A small gesture of respect, perhaps. Or maybe he simply could not bear to sit in a seat that no longer held power. "Admiral Park," he said, "welcome to Velthara. High Sovereign, I hope this will be a productive meeting. I have signed the surrender documents. All our forces have been ordered to stand down. The war is over." "The war is over," Yuna agreed. "Now we must discuss what comes next." They talked for 3 hours. Details of the new Galactic Coalition, rights for freed species, economic agreements, cultural exchanges, trade routes, criminal justice. 1,000 small decisions that would shape the future of dozens of worlds. The High Sovereign listened more than he spoke. This was new for him. For 9,000 years, he had given orders and expected obedience. Now he was learning to negotiate, to compromise, to treat other species as equals. It was a difficult lesson. But he was learning. "I have one question," he said finally. "A personal question, if you will permit it." "Ask, why did you not destroy us? You had the power. You had the right. We declared war. We tried to enslave your people. By any measure, you would have been justified in killing every Velthari in existence." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, 3,000 years ago, when we first learned about your empire, we made a decision. We decided that we would never become what we were fighting against. We would prepare for war. We would become strong. But we would not become monsters, even after everything we did, especially after everything you did. Revenge is easy. Building something better is hard. We did not spend 3,000 years preparing just to destroy you. We spent 3,000 years preparing to survive you. And once we survived, we wanted to create something that would last. Something that would make the galaxy better, not worse. The High Sovereign was silent. "You see," Yuna continued, "we learned from your mistakes. You ruled through fear. You conquered because you could. You never asked if you should. And in the end, your empire was hollow. Strong on the outside, weak on the inside. When you finally faced a real challenge, you crumbled. And you believe your coalition will be different? I hope it will be. We have built it on different principles. Cooperation instead of domination. Choice instead of force. It may not work. It may fail. But at least we are trying something new." She stood up. "The universe is vast, High Sovereign. There is room for all of us. The only question is whether we can learn to share it." 1 year later, life had returned to normal. Or at least, a new kind of normal. On New Bizen, Sergeant Major Hyun-woo Kang reopened his restaurant. The building had been rebuilt exactly as it was before, down to the old television in the corner and the worn wooden tables. The only difference was a small medal hanging on the wall behind the counter. The Medal of Valor, awarded for his defense of the valley. He never talked about the war if he could help it. When customers asked, he would shrug and change the subject. The past was the past. What mattered was the present. The stew, the customers, the quiet rhythm of ordinary life. Sometimes, Valkyrie would visit. Tourists, curious about the species that had defeated their empire. They would look at the small restaurant, at the ordinary man behind the counter, and struggle to understand. "Is it true," one asked, "that you held a valley against 10,000 warriors by yourself?" Hyun-woo shrugged. "It was a squad action. 30 of us. I just gave orders. But you were not a soldier. You were a cook. I was both. All humans are both. We do what needs to be done." The Valkyrie did not understand. Perhaps they never would. But they paid for their food and left polite reviews on the planetary network. And that was enough. On Earth, General Tae-woo Kim finally retired. He had served for 40 years, rising from a young lieutenant to the commander of all human ground forces. His last act was to submit a final report on the war. The document was 3,000 pages long. It analyzed every battle, every tactic, every success and failure. It would be studied in military academies for centuries. The title page bore a simple designation: Operation Field Test, Performance Review, Satisfactory, not excellent. Not perfect, satisfactory, because there was always room for improvement. Always lessons to learn. Always ways to be better. That was the human way. In orbit around Earth. Aboard the space station Horizon, Admiral Una Park sat in her office and looked out at the stars. She was 64 years old now. Her hair was fully gray. Her eyes were tired. But she was not ready to retire. Not yet. Lieutenant Sun Ho-han entered with a datapad. He was older too, promoted twice since the war ended. A commander now, probably on track to become an admiral himself someday. "Admiral, we have received first contact signals from a new species. They call themselves the Korath. Initial analysis suggests they may be hostile." Una took the datapad and read the report. The Korath were from beyond the galactic rim, powerful, aggressive, expanding rapidly. Their ships had destroyed a survey vessel 2 weeks ago without warning. Have they responded to diplomatic attempts? "Yes, Admiral. They said, and I quote, 'Submit or be destroyed.' There is no third option." Una smiled. It was the same smile she had worn at the beginning of the last war. Calm, patient, confident. "Schedule a meeting with the Coalition Defense Council. We need to begin preparations." "Admiral, if I may ask, are you not tired of war?" "Tired?" Una considered the question. "No, I am not tired of war. I am tired of species who think they can threaten others without consequence. I am tired of empires that believe might makes right. I am tired of bullies." She stood up and walked to the window. The stars stretched out before her, infinite and full of possibilities. Humanity spent 3,000 years preparing for the Valkyrie. We will spend however long we need preparing for the Korath. And whoever comes after them. And whoever comes after that. Because that is what we do. We prepare. We defend. We survive. And if they are stronger than the Valkyrie, then we will learn from them, study them, adapt to them. And eventually, we will beat them. Because that is also what we do. She turned back to her aide. Send out a general alert to all human forces. Training schedules are to be increased by 20%. New weapon research programs are to be accelerated. And tell the troops. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Tell them the break is over. We have new friends to meet." Sunho saluted and left. Yuna sat back down and picked up her coffee cup. It was cold now. She did not mind. She had drunk cold coffee during the last war. She would drink it during the next one. Some things never changed. Outside her window, ships moved through space. Human ships, Velthari ships, ships from a dozen other species that had joined the coalition. They flew together now, training together, preparing together. The galaxy was still dangerous. New threats emerged every year. But humanity was no longer alone. They had allies now, partners, friends, and they were still preparing, always preparing, because that was the lesson they had learned in those 3,000 years of waiting. The universe did not care about fairness or justice or who deserved to survive. It only cared about who was ready. Humanity was ready, and they always would be. The end.